And of course, earlier today, Trump and Putin did just have that 90-minute phone call. Details are still coming out about that call. And joining us now is Andrei Illarionov, senior analyst for Russian and European affairs at the Center for Security Policy. Andrei, thank you for joining us. That White House readout, it says that Putin agreed to halt strikes on energy infrastructure for 30 days. So this really isn't a full ceasefire. Why is Putin holding out on agreeing to a full ceasefire at this point?
Thank you for inviting me. Essentially, there is no agreement on the ceasefire on energy objects because it is unilateral decision on Putin's side, but there is no agreement on the either American side. But what is even more important, there is no agreement from the Ukrainian side. It is impossible to get any agreement if there is no any reaction from the Ukrainian side. Ukrainian side is silent. And as it is known that in the previous conversations between Ukrainian team and US team, it was a suggestion actually given by the US team to Ukraine, which Ukraine has accepted, to have a 30 days ceasefire for all operations, not for attacks on energy infrastructure. So that is why the status of this claim or announcement from the Russian side, from the Putin side, is irrelevant because it has not been agreed prior, neither by the United States nor by Ukraine. So that's a unilateral decision, and it is understandable because the Ukrainian attacks on energy infrastructure in Russia did cause a lot of problems for Putin. So that is why this is the only thing that Putin publicly agreed with, actually not agreed with, he actually unilaterally announced that he is going to do this. Okay, it's up to him. But actually, it's only words. Just a few minutes ago, my colleagues in Kiev has informed me that it was a very serious attack on Kiev and on energy infrastructure in Ukraine everywhere. So that is why, once again, we see the same story as we have seen for many, many years from Putin's side. He is lying. He is violating all agreements that he's signing or he's agreeing publicly in word, but he does not keep his words.
Well, building off of that, Andrei, what terms could we expect Putin to bring to the table if there's any chance of a future peace deal? What would he likely want? What would he likely reject? Is there anything at all that could come to a deal?
Essentially, what we know that there is only one thing that has been agreed upon between Trump and Putin. It is beginning of negotiations somewhere in the Middle East. What is important that it's only the statement from Putin's side and from the press secretary of the White House that those negotiations should start. It is not clear when, where, at which level, whether Ukraine will participate in these negotiations, whether Europe will participate in these negotiations, what will be the topic of those negotiations. So that nothing is known. Nothing is clear. So we have known this situation that at least a U.S. side, Trump, is interested in such a negotiations. Yes, but it's not news. We knew it just not only a few months ago, but even during the electoral campaign of the then candidate to the U.S. presidency, Donald Trump. So that is why essentially what we have from this telephone call, essentially nothing in terms of content. So there is no new information from that. And it is understandable. Why? Because Putin never interested in real peace. In real peace because he is aggressor. He launched this aggression against Ukraine. He is waging this brutal aggression against Ukraine and killing people. And he's interested in continuation of this aggression. So that is why to start a real negotiations with aggressor, it is possible. It is possible on the U.S. side. It is possible on the Ukrainian side, only with very important precondition, with preconditions of military defeat of Russian forces in Ukraine and on those fronts of Russian-Ukrainian forces, Russian-Ukrainian war. Before that, we see very clearly that Putin is not interested at all in having any serious dialogue.
Andrei, building off of, you mentioned the Middle East there, and I think it's also really interesting that the future of Iran and Israel were part of that call between Trump and Putin today. Now, the readout, it said that both Trump and Putin share the view that Iran should never be in a position to destroy Israel. So tell us more, how exactly could the Middle East fit into a potential peace deal between Ukraine and Russia, if possible?
You're absolutely right. This is probably the only real serious element from those press releases from Moscow and from Washington that we can get. The two presidents agreed that Iran would never be in a position to destroy Israel. Frankly speaking, we knew this position before. It has been stated certainly by all US presidents, and it has been stated by Putin as well before. So it is good that we have another confirmation of this position in new geopolitical reality. It means that only expression of this position, but does it mean that Russia, for example, would stop transfer of military technologies to Iran? It is not clear yet. Putin did not make any promises in this regard, and whether military cooperation between Putin and Iran's Ayatollah continue or not, it is still questions to be discussed.
Absolutely. And I think it's fair to say that President Trump took a different diplomatic approach in his dealing with President Putin than the previous U.S. administration. So from everything we're seeing right now, how significant has this change in tactic been to at least bring Russia to the table to talk about a potential ceasefire?
So far, this new tactic did not bring substantial results, except of substantial concessions from the U.S. Administration side towards aggressor on many aspects. And Putin used the opportunity to underscore that United States aligned with Russia and North Korea against Ukraine and against Europe on a Russian-Ukrainian war. There are many other concessions, including restoration of diplomatic relations, sending U.S. ambassadors to Moscow and Russian ambassador to Washington, as well with tens or maybe hundreds of Russian spies into Washington. But so far, we have not seen any concessions, not only actual, but even verbal concession from the Russian side. So that is why these new tactics is still waiting for confirmation that these new tactics do bring substantial positive results for the United States, first of all, and also for Ukraine and for Europe and for the peace.
Andrei, I think you already touched on this a little bit, but tell us more. What exactly kind of next steps could President Trump take if Putin is to refuse outright any terms of a potential peace deal in the coming days? Is there more pressure that could be applied on Russia? What form is it likely to take?
U.S. president has a lot of resources just to get his main goal. His main goal is peace, long-term peace between Russia and Ukraine. And that is why President Trump can do exactly what he promised during his electoral campaign. He can provide Ukraine with all necessary weapons, and he promised that he would flow all possible weapons, including those that he has not been provided by the Biden administration. Donald Trump promised to send nuclear submarines, use nuclear submarines to the Russian shores, that to make Mr. Putin to think more about the possibility of peace. Mr. Trump mentioned that he promised to use U.S. missiles for hits against Moscow. That also could be an instrument. There are many instruments, including providing all military intelligence, providing substantial support for Europeans who are also to support Ukraine. So all these measures that would lead, first of all, this is the prior conditions for peace, military defeat of Russian forces, that opened the way for ceasefire first, and after that for long-lasting peace in this part of the world. So Mr. Trump has all possible resources to reach his goals that he has proclaimed so many times by providing all necessary resources, first of all, military aid to Ukraine.
Andrei, last question for you here. Based off of everything you're seeing right now, if somehow a peace deal is agreed to, or even a ceasefire, a full ceasefire in the next upcoming days and weeks. How do you see that impacting U.S.-Russia relations? How do you see U.S.-Russia relations really developing from there?
Frankly speaking, I cannot see, actually, I don't see any signal or any sign that not only long-lasting peace or ceasefire can be achieved with in the current circumstances, because it's absolutely clear that Putin is not interested in that. He puts a lot of preconditions that are absolutely unacceptable, not only for Ukraine or Europe, but it's unacceptable for the United States. So that is why it is necessary still to work a little bit with Putin, just to make him more agreeable to reasonable suggestion from the US/Ukraine/European side. And the main instrument for that is all necessary military and other aid to Ukraine to achieve this particular precondition for long-lasting peace: military defeat of Russian forces.
We're definitely going to be keeping an eye on any other updates that come out of that phone call. Andrei Illarionov, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Fiona.